Hello and welcome to Truth is Freedom. I'm Dennis Cummins, and I'm so glad that you're here with us today, still fighting for truth because it does liberate us. And today I've got a very special guest, Danielle Pentsak. She is the Cascade Director for Turning Point USA, that's covering Alaska, the state of Washington, and Oregon, probably the most difficult region of all of the United States. And I'm so glad that she's able to be here. And we're going to talk about some very critical things. Daniela, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You have an incredible opportunity ahead of you because this is probably the most challenging district or region of all for Turning Point. How did you get started? And give me a little background on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all throughout college, I did work in politics, and I worked for my state Republican Party, and through that, I got more involved with the nonprofit sector, and that's how I initially got involved with Turning Point as well. Working for Turning Point has been extremely fruitful for me and for the region, but it is very difficult. There is a long road ahead to getting young people involved here, but I'm doing whatever I can, however I can. Also, our college field coordinator is also doing however she can to get more young people involved into the conservative movement.
Right on. And you've been in this position how long?
For about a year now, a little over a year, actually. I got on when the high school field program was officially launched last year, and I was one of the first recruits to get on board, and I'm still working for them.
Okay. Give me a snapshot for somebody that doesn't understand what you're doing, especially with the younger generations for Turning Point. What does that look like?
So my primary job is to get young people involved in their communities and to civically engage, and also to represent conservative and traditional American principles on the on school campus. I work directly with high schoolers. So what I do is that I try to get high schoolers to start chapters on their high school campus, or if they're homeschooled in their communities, and recruit other students that are passionate about promoting traditional American values, pro-American values, pro-Constitution values, so we can protect those traditional values and still retain them on the high school campus. And, that's very much needed right now, especially with the promotion of critical theory, with the promotion of anti-white male sentiment. It's very much important. And so I'm trying to basically mobilize the youth and to get them passionate about those principles.
So when you talk about those principles, you mentioned there's 3 core principles that you're helping them to embrace and share out to other platforms. What are those?
Yes, so Turning Point's main 3 principles that we talk about it's very simple. It is promoting individual liberty, because we believe that's very much important, and to be self-sufficient, protecting the Constitution, and promoting the values of capitalism and how helpful capitalism is to the nation and the current system. It's the only system that works. So those are the 3 principles that we stand by and that we promote. We are 501c3, so we are a nonprofit. We don't try to get students engaged in campaign work, or even though, they're free to do what they will outside of that in their chapter events or activities, but we're just trying to promote those principles and those values and to maintain traditional American sentiments on campus.
So what are some of the antithesis, the opposing forces that you're seeing confront these 3 values, personal freedoms, constitutional rights, as well as capitalism?
Well, absolutely. Well, especially in the state of Washington, I think it's fairly obvious that we're seeing this. First of all, the promotion of socialism is just rampant. Like they're saying that the capitalism is exploiting everyone at the most basic level, and that's stripping away their ability to make a living. And even though the economy isn't great, but once again, capitalism is the best system that we have. And I went to school all throughout here from K through 12 and onward, and every time that I went to school, especially in higher education, they have constantly berated the principles of capitalism. Same with the Constitution. They're trying to attack our very notion of what the Constitution stands for and the values of the Constitution. And so they're trying to attack us from the inside out. And another way that they do this is by, and this is the most important, is attacking especially younger students' individual or their concept of their gender identity or their sexual identity. And I think this is how the enemy gets younger people is that it gets them to question who they really are on the inside. And I think once they attack that from the inside, and also getting them dependent on, on the idea that the government can help you financially, trying to get them rely on that and dependent completely on the government, and also question who they are on the inside. I think it's attacking them on all aspects, and it's really multifaceted. And so what we're trying to do is to get especially high school students, and what I do, but also college students, to understand that they can stand up for themselves. They know who they are on the inside, and also rely on themselves, to not be dependent on the government to provide for them every step of the process as they grow older, so that, when they do grow up and they do want to start a family, they'll be completely self-sufficient and confident in who they are.
Yeah. You know what I find, though, is that the moment somebody wants to be an individual and stand up for the personal rights, if they're not conforming to what I would call the state religion, LGBTQ, gender politics, and all of those pieces. If you don't conform to that, then basically you're ostracized, you're pushed out, you're penalized, maybe berated, maybe expelled. It's amazing how they're trying to eliminate the voice of anybody to speak out that's based on truth. And, I go back to Adam and Eve. And what got them in trouble was they got to question their creator. And when you question your creator, you question your identity. And when you question your identity, you start making really bad choices.
Absolutely.
And then you're not allowed to question. And this is where, going through all the lockdowns and the pandemic and all of these pieces, it's been nothing but conformity, and you will bow or else. You will take this mandated jab. You will do these things rather than allowing people to make choices and decisions. And so I think that's so powerful that you're helping young students remember that they do have a voice, they do have an identity, and they don't have to conform. And they do have rights. And we keep hearing that we're not allowed to have rights.
Right.
We've seen that in the state of Washington here and Oregon, California, New Mexico, constitutional rights have been trampled.
Absolutely.
Because they don't have the rule of law, but they have the effect of law, because they've got the guns, they've got the boots, they've got everything to enforce what's not even constitutional.
And it's really ironic because, these same people say that they're all inclusive, right? And they want diversity of opinion. Obviously, that's not the case.
Right.
That's another reason I do what it is that I do, because what we're trying to do is establish an environment and I don't like to use this word, but in a way, it's kind of like a safe space. But so students will, at least with conservative, Christian, traditional Christian American values, and who grew up in that environment, can go to the school and have a friend group, an identified friend group that can help them along the process of, developing in that way. So before they reach the age where they go to college, they won't be completely lost.
Yeah.
That they will have some idea that there are people like them out there. And especially with high school, but also in college, oftentimes, and this is a case, what happened to me when I was going to college myself, is that when you feel alone, you're less likely to speak out. That's the case, even with adults, that's the case. So, what we're trying to do with Turning Point early on in high school and in college is to provide them that environment so they feel like they can speak out.
Yep.
And so we can reintroduce that diversity of opinion on campus, because even though educators will say that they invite that in the classroom, that's obviously not the case, especially here in Washington State.
Right.
So that's all we're trying to do, is to provide them that space so they feel like they can speak up.
Yeah, and again, this approach is a threat to their entire ideology and their platform, because they know, and this is why they need safe spaces, coloring books. This is why they need basically to control the narrative, because if somebody speaks truth, that's why they have to scream, shout. That's why Charlie Kirk gets, is so opposed by the screaming and the shouting, because you can't have a civil conversation and debate truth. There's no debate to truth. Truth is truth, and it stands on its own merits. Exactly. And so that's why I think it's so important what you guys are doing. And the left understand this. The liberals understand this. That's why they're going for the kindergartners and preschoolers with the LGBTQ to try to reform their thinking about what gender identity. Yeah. And so it's so important that the work that you're doing is really helping to help these students become empowered, to know that they're not alone, they're not isolated, and they're not weird.
Yeah, exactly.
For thinking truth.
Yep, exactly. No, and that's the thing, is that truth is it's unfortunate because you're supposed to go to school to learn, and to learn the truth. But that's especially how it is in Washington State. It's a complete opposite. It's on indoctrination camps, especially higher education, and high school onward too. But when kids go to school now, depending on the school, of course, there are a lot of good private schools out there that do their best to provide quality education. But as far as the public school system goes here in Washington State, they're going there to learn the complete opposite of what truth is. They're going in line of darkness. Especially as pertains to gender ideology, also critical race theory, which, despite what leftists say, is permeating all the way down to like kindergarten, first grade, second grade level. We're already introducing those concepts early on so they can frame the paradigm for what the students will believe growing, as they grow up. So what we're trying to do that is try to get them as early as we can. Logistically, we don't have a K through or before high school program, obviously, for Turning Point, but Turning Point Academy is launching, so that could change in the future, but I can only speak to my capacity. And so we are targeting high school students because we understand that this is such a vulnerable time in their lives. They're changing as people physically and mentally. And so what we're trying to do is to help them maintain those Christian values and those American values that they grew up with. So they can retain that in the future.
Well, there's definitely a vacuum in the school system. Now, there are some amazing teachers still in the school system, as we know, the public school system. We have some in our church that are teaching, but they're a minority, and they are being discriminated against
terribly
in ways. I know of one teacher, because she refuses to display the pride flag in her office. They discriminate against her, and they put pressure on her in ways that it's like basically they want her to quit or leave, because it's you have not bowed your knee to the state religion. And this is the kind of incessant pressure that is going on that I don't think people realize. And it takes more than just having a conservative school board. The teachers union is as liberal and woke as can be. And I think it's one of the biggest political programs out there to really push forward this leftist agenda and to indoctrinate an entire young generation. That's why, if they can get the younger generation, they've got the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And since working for Turning Point, I've come to realize that there are a lot of conservative educators out there, even here in Washington. It's just that, they don't want to come out and say it because, the very moment they do, they're going to get attacked. I have family that also works in public education, and it's the same thing. I have a mother who works in elementary school education, and even at that level, you can't really, because they're already introducing gender ideology that early. So even if she says something, she's subject to get heavily reprimanded or lose her job. It's very scary what's happening, and it's just that it's that constant berating of these principles and berating of these individuals. But slowly but surely, as we've seen, they're just terrified to come out and speak. But I think a lot of people would be, especially teachers, would be surprised to find out there are actually quite a few. There's a good number of conservative educators out there. It's only a matter of identifying each other and speaking out at the same time. But the numbers are there. It's just a matter of, getting involved. Unfortunately, in Washington State, conservatives they're pretty complacent still. And I think that's why the left is getting away with encouraging these ideas so much.
Well, we've heard about the silent majority for so long. Oh, the silent majority, and watch out for the silent majority. Silence isn't a threat to the enemy. It's not a threat to the left, because like you said, silence is complacency. Silence is timidity. And we have to figure out if we're finally going to pick a side. Because, I go back to Nazi Germany, and there was 18,000 churches roughly in that time period. 3,000 were pro-Hitler. 3,000 were against Hitler. But the problem was the 12,000 churches in the middle that remained silent and indifferent, that said, it's not our battle, it's not our fight.
Right.
And how many millions of people had to die as a result of allowing a small minority party called the Nazi regime to destroy much of Europe.
Exactly.
And so this is the problem. Just because you're silent doesn't make you right. You can have right thinking and still be silent, and you can be dead wrong. And I think about, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're Babylonian names. But they refused to bow. They wouldn't bow to the music.
Yeah.
And this is what we need. We need people not to bow to the music of the state religion, of the state mantra. And people got to get a backbone. They got to quit being afraid. And this is where, I'm tired of the left trying to make people examples of when they do stand. Oh, we're going to heat the furnace 7 times hotter. You're going to really pay. And they did this. They did this with the jab. We had people that worked for the state. Many families in our church lost their jobs because they chose medical freedom.
Yeah.
And thank God they had a church and a pastor that helped them through that.
Yeah.
In those times when they lost their job because they wouldn't play to the music. And this is where we need young Americans, not young weird Americans. We just need young Americans to stand and be brave today.
Yeah, and also, and what I like to emphasize is that this isn't a partisan issue. At the end of the day, this is just promoting and defending common sense. There's a lot of Americans out there that I think are on our side. It's just that the political nature of the United States today, we have to make everything partisan, everything completely polarized. But it's not even though this is majority leftists that are promoting this idea, what we have to say is that this is a common sense issue. Saying that you're born a man or a woman and that's the way it is, that's common sense.
Yeah.
Promoting the Constitution, that's not being a Nazi, that's just being proud of your country. And the fact that the Constitution is a unique document, and that's something we should be proud of. So, just constantly discussing how these are principles that we should stand for, not only because it's right, but because it makes sense. Yeah. And I think if we, encourage that idea, more people may be more attuned to it. But but the power is in numbers, and all I have to say that the numbers are there. It's just a matter of getting people encouraged and empowered enough to speak out about it. Yeah.
Well, I think what they do, if common sense and truth is here, the left has to go so far extreme away and then so radical to say, then see how far apart we are. Those people are nut jobs.
Right.
Look at where we're at. We are so progressive. We are so with it. And then, people are almost embarrassed to stand for truth.
Exactly.
And sanity.
Right, exactly, because they think they're the weird ones, right? Yeah.
And so that's why, I want to say I'm so proud of you in your stage of life and what you're doing, especially as a female. It's incredible. I want to say that there should be more men, young men, standing in your shoes doing the work that you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because what I find is that there are many women of God that are out there willing to fight, but I don't see many men of God willing to fight and be in the positions that you're in. Look, it's easy to go to church on Sundays and pray, okay? But to really be the church, like what you're doing, and you're going into the world and not being of the world, that takes character of Christ.
Yeah.
And so congratulations to you.
Well, thank you. And it's true, we do need more men involved, young men especially. A lot of that, I think, is also byproduct of, obviously, the man-hating culture that we're in right now, and also the feminization of education that we've been seeing. A majority of people that are being graduating are women, right? And getting into education institutions. And then, as a result, they're shaming men for just being who they are, especially if they're white men, frankly. And I think with the trends we are seeing currently, more Generation Z men are trending more conservative. So I would think in the next few years, hopefully next 10 years, we may see a shift. But one can only hope, one can only pray for that. I encourage especially young men to also get involved in the fight, everyone should get involved if they can, men and women. Obviously, as a woman, I'm going to, encourage women to get involved too. But But yeah, especially men, they shouldn't be afraid of who they are.
Yep.
And that's really a tragedy, is that what we're seeing in education right now is that if you're white and you're male, you don't matter anymore. And that's what, I think we should avoid. We shouldn't exclude anyone, whether, I mean, how basic is it? Your skin color and your sex shouldn't determine, what you're capable of or who you are as a person or your worth.
Yep. Well, and I want to jump into that in our next segment and talk a little bit more about that, because we need to get rid of the insanity and quit being embarrassed of common sense and truth. And so I appreciate you being on. We're going to be back in this next segment. We're going to be addressing some of these issues. But how would they get a hold of you if they want to know more about maybe how to engage their students, or
Sure.
have you come and speak to a group? How would they do that?
So if you have any questions about what it is that I do, or you have a student that get involved, just email me at Danielle.Pentsak, PENTSAK, @tpusa.com. I'm sure you guys will write it down on the on the thing. So that's my primary email. Contact me through there, and also you can just go to tpusa.com on the main website. It will show you a map of all the chapters we have nationally. You can zoom in on Washington State. Maybe you have a local chapter that your student can join. Otherwise, if not, just contact me, and I can get them involved as soon as I can.
Awesome. Thank you for being on, and don't forget, come back for part 2 here at Truth is Freedom. Thank you. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share it out. Make a difference, because we're changing lives. God bless.